So recently a report came out that Houston Rockets want to improve their roster. Well, that's not a surprise as their goal is to win the championship. They would be willing to deal anyone including Chris Paul. That's not a surprise either, at least for me, since we know Paul's injury history and even a certain bad reputation when it comes to delivering in the biggest moments. Obviously, a lot of things would need to go right for the Rockets to trade Chris Paul. In most cases, the salaries would have to match, and it would be super hard to match that bloated salary of Chris Paul. But just for a moment, let's forget the salary cap and all the rules that would need to be met for the trade to proceed. Let's just take a look at all the teams first and imagine that every team could have a clear path to trade for Chris Paul. Hey guys, Purple Punch here, and I want to look at all the teams and figure out who would, should, and shouldn't trade for Chris Paul, and would it actually be worth it? To better evaluate the teams who could use a Chris Paul at this stage of his career, let's look at the player. Chris Paul has been widely known as one of the best, if not the best point guard of this generation. He's a 9-time All-Star, has led the league in assists multiple times, and has been that perfect point guard for a lot of years. But he's 34 years old. He carries some injury concerns, and I know I said we'll imagine that salary cap doesn't exist here, but in reality, if the trade happens, his new team would have to absorb a huge 3 more years of his contract, which in total will pay him around $125 million. It's also worth mentioning that he's in his decline. He's just not the player he used to be anymore, and that's okay. We all meet father time eventually. Let's go through all the teams. Let's start with the Western Conference. Golden State Warriors obviously don't need a point guard as they have a better point guard than Steph Curry. Denver Nuggets also have a young good point guard in Jamal Murray. Portland has Damian Lillard. Oklahoma City has Westbrook, and even though OKC might benefit from Paul's better decision making, Russell is a better player at this point of their respective careers. And considering the loyalty he showed to stay in OKC, I don't think he gets moved anytime soon. San Antonio Spurs. I don't see them making such a trade. They have young point guards on the roster, and San Antonio is just not that team that makes those big trades often, especially for older players. Clippers have a point guard, and even if they didn't, I just don't see that marriage again. Paul didn't leave the Clippers on good terms, you know. Sacramento Kings should stick with De'Aaron Fox, because he's very good, and he's much younger and will be improving even more. Los Angeles Lakers shouldn't trade for Chris Paul as well. I know this was probably the first place everyone thought Chris Paul would like to go if he was traded, and I'm not disputing that. To play with his good friend LeBron, back in LA, very exciting. But they have Lonzo Ball, to whom I think they're gonna hold. He's a very talented player. Sure, he's had his own injury struggles, and you might argue he isn't progressing at the rate he should, but Chris Paul is no diamond either anymore. So whether they stay with Lonzo or sign Kyrie, Chris Paul will not be playing for the Lakers. Timberwolves is an interesting option. They have one more year of Jeff Teague at $19 million, and Chris Paul would definitely be an upgrade over him, but at what price? I don't see it happening, also considering the fact that Paul would probably need to go to a team that's also contending for a championship, and that ain't Minnesota. Memphis Grizzlies are looking to retool right now and have their own big money invested in their point guard Mike Conley, who probably is a better player right now. Why would they trade a cheaper, younger, and better player for a more expensive, a tad older, and a tad worse player? Doesn't make sense to me. New Orleans maybe could have traded for him, but Dell Demps is no longer there and David Griffin knows what he's doing. They do have a necessity at point guard, but will they wait out on Anthony Davis' situation and budding draft of Zion Williamson? I don't think they need a big contract on the books. That leaves the two worst teams of the Western Conference, the Dallas Mavericks and the Phoenix Suns, and the fifth best team, Utah Jazz, as the only three options who realistically would like an upgrade at the point guard spot. With Jazz, they are a playoff team right now, and they would need a better point guard. Ricky Rubio can pass, but he can't shoot, so Paul would be a noticeable upgrade. But would that make them a championship contender? Probably not. Dallas Mavericks traded for Porzingis. They have Luka Doncic and some good pieces around, but trading for Paul would mean win now, and are they ready to win now? I don't know. It would make them better, it would make them a playoff team for sure, but Mark Cuban is a smart man, so I don't think he does that. And Phoenix. They've been waiting for a competent point guard for so long. Devin Booker is really good, and DeAndre Ayton could be that anchor in the middle, but what does getting Paul really improves for them? Pretty much nothing, and if it gives nothing, why should they even bother? So, just quickly running through the Western Conference, I've come to a conclusion that 3 teams would really like an upgrade at the point guard spot, but even for them, this trade wouldn't make sense. Sad, but true. Let's move on to the East. Who at least theoretically would want Chris Paul? Bucks signed Eric Bledsoe to an extension just 3 months ago, so that's not happening, and they're already right there knocking on the door to the NBA Finals. Toronto has Kyle Lowry, who also has a big contract and has had problems delivering in the playoffs, but I don't see Toronto making such trades since they're right now up in the finals 1-0 against Golden State, and Lowry has been doing his thing. Philadelphia has Ben Simmons. Yes, the dude needs to learn how to shoot, and if he doesn't, next year maybe they do have to look for an upgrade at the position, but not now and not in the person of Chris Paul. Indiana Pacers just don't have that culture of big trades, and I don't think Paul takes them anywhere further than they are. Getting a point guard upgrade would be nice, but let's see what they can do with Oladipo back in squad first. Brooklyn Nets, would be an interesting option as they do need a point guard. D'Angelo Russell's contract has ended, but I think first they'll try to sign Kyrie, which is what everyone has been talking about. If Kyrie doesn't sign, they'll probably try to re-sign D'Angelo, and even if they can't, I just can't see them trading for Paul. They have that first-hand bad experience of what happens when you trade for superstars past their prime. Detroit Pistons have Reggie Jackson for 1 more year. Not the best point guard, but their problems or missing pieces include a lot more than just a point guard, so getting Chris Paul won't solve anything, and that's why they won't do it. As for Miami Heat, they have Goran Dragic, who has a player option which he will probably exercise. If he didn't, they would be looking for a point guard, but Justice Winslow has played some, albeit not great either. Most importantly, the Harrison family and Pat Riley wouldn't make a deal for an aging player that doesn't take them anywhere. Washington Wizards have their own problems with John Wall, who has an enormous contract himself, and while they probably won't win with him, he is younger and better than CP3. Plus, I think they should go in rebuild mode if they could somehow trade those contracts. Adding a big salary player isn't an option right now. Atlanta Hawks already have their point guard of the future in Trae Young, and actually they have some more good young players. They should just stick with losing some more and developing their players. Chicago Bulls, as far as I know, would like to get Lonzo Ball, and all in all I think they want to get just young players and build for the future playoff runs. Cleveland just last year drafted a point guard in Colin Sexton, and are kinda in a don't win now mode, so they are out of the mix. New York Knicks do need a point guard. The Frank Ntilikina experiment just isn't working out. But they have set their sights higher on signing Kyrie and KD during free agency, so I think getting Chris Paul is out of the question. I mean, it is James Dolan, so you never know, but no, that just isn't happening. Which leaves us with 3 teams again. 3 teams who could possibly need a player of CP3's caliber: Boston, Orlando, and Charlotte. Boston is interesting. Kyrie is probably leaving, so is Terry Rozier, although the decision of the latter depends on the former. But if they both leave, that would leave Boston without a point guard. They were in win now mode this year, but without Kyrie, and if they don't land Anthony Davis, getting Chris Paul really doesn't give them anything, which is what I think will happen. But look out for Boston. They might just do the move to keep them competitive, and who knows, maybe even do something bigger. I wouldn't do the move, but Danny Ainge might do it, and who am I to argue with Danny Ainge? Orlando definitely needs a point guard, and they actually might be the most likely team to try to trade for Chris Paul. They have some pieces in place. TJ Augustine should be a backup, and if they sign a couple of good wing players and re-sign Vucevic, a deal for CP3 to try to win it all, now it isn't out of the question. A bit unlikely, but not out of the question. And the last but not least, the Charlotte Hornets. Rumors have been swirling that Charlotte is one of the teams that might at least inquire about getting Chris Paul. They have a very good point guard in Kemba Walker, but he's a free agent. I think they have thought about getting Chris Paul, but just vaguely. I think their first priority would be to resign Kemba Walker. He's their only real star they've had in decades. He has a following in Charlotte, and after making the All-NBA team, he can get that Supermax contract offer, which makes staying in Charlotte a juicy prospect. If they don't retain Kemba, they could get Chris Paul. But even with an all-star point guard, they couldn't even reach the playoffs. A lot of players would need to change for them to form something even remote to a playoff contender. I don't think that's a deal worth looking at closely. Just retain Kemba and give him some help. So, going through both conferences, I actually don't see a team which would 100% need a CP3 at this stage of his career. Majority of the teams already have better or younger and cheaper options, and some teams just aren't there market-wise or timeline-wise. That's sad, because Chris Paul really was a great point guard, but as sad as it sounds, the market for him right now is almost non-existent. Age, injuries, and throw in that big contract of his, and any trade for him might get that GM fired soon. Just the sad truth. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. What is CP3's worth in your opinion? Will he get traded, and who should trade for him? Leave a comment below and let's discuss it. Maybe combining all of our great minds, we can come up with something. Make sure to leave a like for this video and don't forget to check other videos on this channel. As always, subscribe and enable bell notifications to not miss any video in the future. Thank you very much. This is Purple Prince, and I'm out.